Hi, everybody. I'm here with Bodie Von Allmen, who is, if you don't know Bodie and you're not in the Virtual Paddle League, he is one of the top competitors in the Virtual Paddle League. He's in the top group in 5K, he's sitting third, and 2K, he's sitting fourth, and over a kilometer, he's sitting 11th. But the 2K and 5K times are incredibly impressive. 28:49 for 5K is, I'm thinking, it's world class, and he's 14 years old. So he's one of the top paddlers around right now. And at only 14, he's got a real bright future. So he's also the future of stand-up paddling. He and a couple of other young athletes that are involved right now. So I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce him to everyone in the Virtual Paddle League, to all the paddle monsters out there, and to everyone else in the virtual paddling world, so that you can learn a little bit more about Bodie and his story. So, Bodie, thank you for joining us. Tell us where you're joining us from today.
Right now, I'm in Pacific City with our family friends, and then heading back home in a little bit.
And so that's in Oregon on the
Oregon.
ocean coast, right? The Pacific coast. And so I know out that window that I could see earlier, there's a nice view of the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And you said you go surfing there pretty much every weekend that you're down there?
Yeah, as long as the waves are decent, we try to go every weekend.
How long you been surfing for? Years.
Pretty much, I think about 12 years.
And you're 14 now, so you got a super early start, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And then you said you said you're going to go home after this, and home is in
Lake Oswego, Oregon.
Lake Oswego, Oregon. So how close is that to Hood River?
About an hour.
About an hour. So so tell us a little bit about where you do your paddling, because I mean, are you commuting an hour a day to each way to get to Hood River, or do you have a place to paddle closer to home?
Well, I live on Oswego Lake, so I paddle there every morning, and then I'll try to go up to the gorge once a week to downwind, or sometimes more if I'm lucky. I'll get.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people out there who are going to be really jealous to hear that you get to go there so often. So tell us a bit about your lake.
It's a pretty small lake, about 7 miles around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a really good place for the Virtual Paddle League time, like the virtual races, because there's no current and very little wind, so it's pretty much just especially in the morning when I go.
Right.
At 6 a.m. It's just dead glass, maybe a couple of
perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. And I imagine it's pretty deep too, right? Like being like in the mountains. So
yeah,
deep water, flat, still water. Yeah, that's perfect. And long enough that you can do like the 2K, 2.5K of a 5K one way, and turn around and come back. That's sweet. So, well, that's amazing. It's one of the things that I think a lot of people are getting back to me about, is that it's hard to find, for some of us, it's hard to find conditions that are good for doing a virtual race. Like you wake up in the morning and you're ready to go, and you go down to where you're going to paddle, and it's a strong headwind, or it's a big side wind, or the water's really choppy or whatever. And it makes it hard to find spots. And then on the days where you see that you got perfect conditions, you're really tired from doing a hard workout the night before or whatever, so it's harder to find times to go for your personal best times. But it sounds like you're living in sort of paddling paradise. You've got access to the ocean on weekends. You've got Hood River, which is, I mean, when people think about downwinding, they think about the Maliko run on Maui, and they think about the gorge. So you've got that, and then you've got this beautiful lake to paddle on. So you're well set up. So listen, tell me, you've been surfing since you were 2. How long have you been paddling, stand-up paddling for?
About 5 years. So I was 9 when I started stand-up paddling.
Okay. And like, tell us how you got started. Like, did you do it with friends or with your dad or your family, or how did that work?
Well, when we live about an hour and a half from the ocean, so I can't surf every day. So I needed something to do. And then paddling was kind of perfect because I live in such a great place for it. I got the gorge, the ocean, and I'm right on the lake. So it's just seems like kind of the perfect thing to do.
So get you on a board, standing up, even if there was no surf. And did you find that being able to stand on a board, in between surf sessions, did you find that helped your surfing, or did you find that being able to go to the gorge and downwind, did you find that helped your
Well,
surfing?
that's the main thing. Like going to the gorge and downwinding, and then longboard surfing out there is just it's a lot. It's very similar. All
Hmm.
like footwork and stuff,
Right.
they help each other out.
So that's great. Great. You found something
Yeah.
that's helping you progress. Like they all help you progress
Yeah.
in each other, right?
Hmm.
If you had to say that you had a priority or an area where you had the most important goals, or even one of the three things: downwinding, paddling on your lake, or surfing in the ocean that you like best, which one would it be?
Uh, my all-time favorite thing to do would be downwinding in the gorge, and that's also my priority.
Hmm.
So like just like the Viento runs, the Gorge Paddle Challenge and the Gorge Downwind Champs are my two like main focuses.
Right.
And
Have you done them before?
yeah, I've done the Gorge Paddle Challenge every year since I was like 9. I mean, my first year I did it, I didn't really paddle, and so
Right. Right.
there's this video that my dad found on his Facebook memories, and it was of me coming in, but I didn't
Right.
know how to finish a race, and so
Uh-huh.
I walked up on the beach. I didn't go like through the finish line.
Right.
And everyone was telling me what to do, but I had no idea how to do it.
Right. Right. And
And it was
obviously you've improved since then.
yep.
Um, so now you started paddling sup as a way to keep in touch with your surfing.
Hmm.
Um, did you do it like when you go stand up paddling right now? Are you usually going alone, or like obviously your dad or your family must have got you involved in
Yeah.
surfing if you started it, at 2 years old, right? Like you didn't go out there on your own unsupervised. So was it your dad, or do you have an older brother or sister that was a surfer and got you into it?
Dad, my dad's a pretty big surfer.
Okay, so that's cool. So then he got you surfing, and then was he the one that sort of steered you into stand up paddling too?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we both
just
started it together.
you started together, so he's paddling as well.
Uh-huh.
And then would he be your coach?
Yeah, I mean, my dad creates like the interval trains and like other workouts to do. And then Joel Yang and Russell Pert, downwind with them all the time. And
Yeah.
so they're my other coaches.
Okay, so you've got plenty of people to paddle with. You got plenty of people to sort of help you and to learn from.
And then I got Jason Warsniak as another fast dude from Portland who I train with a couple times a week.
Right? Are these guys older than you?
Yeah, they're all adults.
Okay, so that's cool. Like that's kind of was like my story when I was young. I was training with guys that were 10 years older than me.
Hmm.
They were adults, and but they kind of let me hang out with them and join the workouts, and that really helped me progress faster. I was lucky that I had that, compared to the other canoe paddlers my age who didn't have the benefit of training with guys with more experience and just who were faster too, right?
Yeah.
And because initially they were faster, and then I started to get better and catch up and pull even with them, and then by the time I was 16, 17, I was faster than they were. But it was really important for me in my development to have those guys around. Have you found that with you training with these guys, that you went from being like the little guy just tagging along to now that you're duking it out with them in workouts and beating them in workouts or even races?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a cool feeling, eh?
it is a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, so look, one of the questions I always ask people is if they did any other sports before they started paddling. So we know that you came into sup paddling from a surf background. But did you do any other sports before you
Well,
started
I did
paddling?
like baseball, basketball, and soccer, but they really weren't my thing. Uh, I'm more of a water guy.
Mm-hmm.
I, I'm not very good at like the land, like my hand coordination sports or stuff like that.
Do you think it's just because you got an early start on the water and you actually got, developed an aptitude for it, some skill for it,
Yeah,
and you're good at it, so you want to stay with what you feel really good and comfortable at, and then I guess the other thing too is that surfing and paddling, those are all individual things where you can do it kind of, when you want to go hard, you can go hard. When you want to back off, you can back off, and that you don't have to conform to the team plan. Do you think that's part of it too?
I think the main thing would be like the water and like I like to be in control of it all
Mm-hmm.
and having to like rely on the team or something.
Right, right. You like to be in control of it as much as you can be in control of, the ocean or a big downwinder, right? Like it's always a little on the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, um, I asked you about training partners and that type of thing and who your coach is, because obviously you don't get to go as fast as you're already going without, coaching, without being on a really sound training program, without the benefit of people to paddle with or to chase in training sessions or to, try to stay ahead of in training sessions. Um, you want to tell us a little bit more detail about your training? Like, do you train? I assume it's not top secret. Do you train like once a day kind of thing, or every day on the water, or do you ever get out more than like a morning and afternoon session, or kind of what would a typical week for Bodhi look like?
Well, usually I try to get out at least one time a day, two or three on a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually like even before virtual paddle league, I was doing a, a 5K every day.
No kidding.
So then yeah, and then when this race came, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's right up your alley. You're ready
Yeah,
for it. Yeah,
yeah.
sweet.
Interval stuff in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it's a downwind day, I'll do downwind and then come home maybe right like catch boat wakes out by like I live on a really good spot for catching boat wakes because
Nice.
small lake and then we got lots of boats. So then like the inner tubers or
Right.
wakes or something, they'll come by and kick up a massive wake,
Wow.
and I can ride that for a while.
What kind of
But
board are you riding?
I have the SIC bayonet 14 by 21 and a half for downwind,
Mm-hmm.
and then flat water or ocean, the RS 14 by 21 and a half, the 240, like the lighter one.
Right. So are you sponsored by SICK or
Yeah, I'm on the SIC team.
okay, there we go. So shout out to your sponsors is always important. That's cool.
Uh,
Um, um, so that's really interesting. Like if you had to say, like obviously you're on the water a lot and you're doing a lot of work. Um, is that like for you in the mountains in Oregon? I would assume that it's seasonal. Like, does your lake freeze over in the winter?
no, I mean one time it's like the edges like were iced over, like
No
there's
kidding.
stuff on the sides, but like we don't the lake doesn't ever freeze, so I can paddle still once or twice a day in the winter too.
And do you?
Yeah.
No kidding. So, okay, so this is a really cool question then for me, and you probably haven't figured out the answer to it, but you can get back to me on it. But the audience won't hear the answer if you don't know it offhand. But do you keep track of your training? Like, do you write down what you did in your training? You keep it like a training diary or training
Yeah,
log?
every weekend, at the end of the day, like every Saturday night, I'll plan out my entire week,
Mm-hmm.
on and off the water, like cross training and
Right.
up training, and then just go by that plan. And then so every at the end of the week, I plan out my week for the next week.
And so when you look at when you're planning for the next week and you're looking at what you did in the week that was just passed, you sort of tally up the distance that you did, or the the amount of hours that you did training or whatever.
Yeah, usually I just try to keep track of like my times and just see where they're going. Like,
Okay.
either hopefully just trying to keep them steady or getting faster.
Right, right. So one of the things that I did is when I was younger, my coach wanted me to keep like a training diary or a training log or whatever. And so I would write down, like he would provide me with the training programs and we talk about them. Like I had a coach that worked with me together, like we were a team. And so I had a lot of input even at a young age into what the training was. But he wanted me to keep like a log of all the work that I'd done, with the idea being that I could look back at it and I could learn from things. Like if I felt, if I could take notes about how different workouts, if I a different particular week of training or an approach we took in a week of training, how that worked and how I felt at the end of the week, or how after a couple of weeks cycle of that type of training, what performance level I was at. If I kept these kind of notes, that you could always look back at them and learn from them. And I was doing a lot of racing, if I did a race and the performance was really good, I could look back at the training I'd done leading into that race and kind of know what worked. Or if the performance wasn't as good as I wanted, I could look back at the training leading into the race and think, oh, okay, I could have changed this or that to hopefully make a better result. And so I started that in 1970, at the beginning of like January 1st, 1979, and I still do it. And I'm 57. So that was like from 17 from 16 to 57. So it's been for 41 years. And it's just a habit that I have. But what I can do is I look and see every year how many kilometers or how much distance I did on the water. And I tend to go only once a day now, because when I was paddling canoe, we'd paddle 10 times a week, 10 different training sessions on the water a week. But I only go once a day now, but I tally up the distance. And every year I'm about 3,000 to 3,500 kilometers, which means that, if you think of that over the number of years that I've been paddling all different craft, like I paddled around the world on my own, like, in total, like a number of times, right? Like I'm at about 140,000 K for my lifetime. And I'm just wondering, like, you must pile in a pretty significant, number of miles in the water every year if you're out doing as much as you are, basically throughout the entire year. I mean, that's just, that's incredible. And I'd also say this, I mean, I think it's a really good thing too, because, there's in canoe kayak, there's a lot of sports science involved because it's been an Olympic sport for so many years. And there's a lot of sports science that's come out of some of the countries that are really dominant in it, like Germany and Hungary. And one of the things that they're finding is that for young athletes developing it, at your age that you're at now, it's really important to do that kind of high volume, be on the water a lot kind of work. And so when I look at you as, you're going fast now, but you're going to go a lot faster because you're a developing athlete. You're not the finished product. And to think of the amount of time that you're on a board right now, and also the types of conditions you're seeing, if you're able to paddle it at the gorge once a week, or able to get in the ocean every weekend, I mean, you're going to have a really formidable base, of paddling fitness, aerobic fitness to build on. And you're going to have a really formidable base of skill too, that is going to put you in, I mean, it's just going to fast track you to, the top of the heap, or, in that top group when you're a little older. And I mean, you're already knocking on the door of that. So it really is amazing. And, to people who are watching who don't understand how hard people train in sport, and for an Olympic athlete, how long that training process takes before they show up on the starting line. I mean, you're like what you're doing now is where so many young future Olympic athletes are at, or where so many current Olympians have been, you know, which I think is really cool. And it's exciting too, because there's a chance that SUP could be in the Olympics, you know, by the time you're in your 20s, and you're going to be primed for it, you know, with the work that you've done. So, do you think about that at all? Do you think about racing internationally against the big guys and you know, maybe racing at the Olympics one day, or you know, does that cross your mind at all? Is that a goal right now, like a dream goal?
Yeah, I mean, my goal would be to race like in professionally pretty
Mm-hmm.
soon, like in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Then if they have the Olympics and if stuff's in the Olympics, then I definitely want to be there.
But for sure, like things like the ISAs and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Have you done have you been to Hawaii to paddle?
Yeah, I've paddled in Hawaii. Usually when we go, I'll surf with Cody Kerbox.
Mm-hmm.
And last time I was in Hawaii was last November, and we went on he took me on a Maliko run.
Right.
And that was really fun. I was on a Bayonet 17, and I'd never
Right.
been on a limited before, and that was crazy. It's just catches and connects bumps like a lot more than a 14.
Right.
It's just crazy.
And so, like, you got any is doing like an M2O or something like that? Is that in your future too?
Um,
If downwinding is something that you really like?
yeah, I really like to do that race. I almost did it this summer, but then it got canceled because the
Right.
COVID. I'm
Right.
hoping this
Right.
summer.
Wow. So that's, I mean, yeah, there's certainly a lot of things you have to look forward to. And hopefully, you know, hopefully COVID, you know, the whole COVID situation is behind us next summer, and you'll be able to do all, you know, all these cool races. Um, so what racing, we talked about the gorge,
Yeah.
and the, you know, the racing that, you know, the gorge, the big gorge races every summer. Have you done any other racing outside of those events, and how did you do in those races other than, you know, the first year just kind of surviving?
Well, I've done lots of races in California, and then I've actually been up. I did the Vancouver Sub Challenge last summer.
Oh, cool.
And that was a lot of fun. That was
Mm-hmm.
one of those, besides like the Gorge Paddle Challenge, that was one of the most fun races I've ever done
Oh,
because
nice.
it's different. Like we had, it started with like the 5K, and then it went, we had like technical racing, and then it was
Right.
just sprints, and then
Right.
heats of sprints. It was really cool, just racing all day rather than just having one race at 8 in the morning and then
Right.
you're done around for
Right.
work.
Right.
And
Right.
like at the Vancouver Sub Challenge, we had racing the entire day.
Nice.
Very cool.
Nice.
I think I want to do more races like that.
Yeah, you really get your, you know, it really makes traveling worthwhile when you get, you know, that, you know, a bunch of opportunities to stand in the starting line and go, right?
Yep.
As opposed to just, you know, having the one race and you're done. Did you race in like the open or against all the adults in those races?
Yeah, I did the open races, like just against everybody.
Right. So you're comfortable. You've been doing that for a while, and you're comfortable being a kid racing all the adults and banging boards in technical races with big guys, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice. Um, um, well, look, you are a young athlete, obviously, and you're still developing. There's a lot of you know, fantastic, you know, older athletes. When I say older, I'm talking about guys in their 20s who are at the top of their game right now. The pros that we all look to as being like, you know, the tops. So the Connors, the Michael Booths, the Lincoln Dews, like all these guys. Do you have, you know, any that are sort of favorites for you that you kind of like to follow closely and are really interested in the results? Or do you have any that any of these pros that you think at, you look at them and you think you want to kind of model the way you paddle or the way you train or the way you, you know, approach a downwinder, you want to try to kind of model it like them?
Yeah, I mean, I've been surfing and paddling with Cody Kerbox
Mm-hmm.
for years. Every time I go to Hawaii, or every time he's at the Gorge Paddle Challenge, he's for sure one of my favorites. And also Livio.
Yep.
Every time he comes to visit Endowment at the Gorge, I always get a couple runs with him.
Uh-huh.
And I try to copy like Danny Chang's technique
Right.
or and Tito's technique.
Mm-hmm.
Work those into my own stroke.
Right. So you definitely you watch a lot of. I mean, you've had the opportunity to paddle with some studs, obviously, and that's really cool. But even when you don't have these guys to train with, you're watching video and you're seeing what they do, and you're thinking about how they paddle and how you can incorporate that into your own stroke, and just trying to soak up all the knowledge like a sponge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. That's really cool. Um, I mean, so obviously, I think you probably alluded to it, and so I think I probably know what the answer is. But if you had to look at paddling and what you're doing right now, what is it that you love most about it?
There's two things. I love getting in like the flow of like a distance paddle, just getting into the groove of things and that. And then there's also nothing like catching just a massive swell in the gorge and just connecting it forever. So those two things are my favorite things about it.
Mm-hmm, cool. So, like, help us out here for the people that don't aren't familiar with the gorge,
Right.
or I mean, they don't have the option to paddle on open water that often. When you talk about a massive swell in the gorge, what are you talking about? Describe what that looks like or what it feels like to be out in those conditions and to sort of harness them.
The craziest thing is when you go over to the Washington side and you're at the hatch and the current's super strong and it's going against you, but you don't really feel that. So all you feel is you're getting lifted by like sometimes just like a 10-foot, like well overhead, massive bump.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got ones in front of you. So you're bracing, and there's such short period. So you're bracing, your
Yeah.
butt's on the ground, just trying to not curl the nose of your board.
Yeah.
And the bayonet does really good in that. But the thing is, like, you feel like you're going a million miles an hour, but if you have like your speed coach or your GPS on, you see you're going like 7 or 8 miles an hour.
Right. Just because the current's so strong in your face, right?
Especially in like February, March, it's just so strong. You feel like you're going so fast, but you're really not. Like,
Is that the windiest time of year?
uh, that's when the current's the strongest. So that's
Okay.
the high current is good because like that kicks up the bumps.
That kicks up the waves too, right? It's not just the wind.
The wind against the current, and then I've never done this, but people have told me about it. Doing like when the wind's blowing east, you're going downwind, down current, and so you're just going super fast. And it's the bumps aren't as big, but it's just you can just paddle over them.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I've never done
Yeah.
it. It just sounds really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, like where I'm from, it's Lake Ontario, so it's a lake, but it's a little bit bigger than the lake you paddle on. It's like 300 kilometers long and probably 70 or 80 kilometers wide. So, when it gets windy, it gets wavy.
Oh yeah.
And so we occasionally get really great swell that turns into shore break. But on other days, we just have like big, just some big ass waves. If it blows the 300K down the whole lake, I live at pretty much one end of the lake, the west end of the lake. So like this morning we had an east wind. And so we had big conditions. And, it's not like what you're talking about at Hood River, but and then when it blows the other way, the waves are they're smaller, but they tend to be a little cleaner and they're faster. And like you said, you can use the speed that you get from one and you can just kind of tap over the wave in front of you and just onto the next one, the next one, the next one. It really, the only limit is your lungs, right? Like how many of those you can do before you got to take a rest.
Yeah.
And it is like really fast. And so we're always a little bit faster when going that way with a smaller bump than we are in a strong wind than we are, in the biggest swell, because it also gets messy too. But we just don't see that enough. And you're living in a part of the world where you're pretty well guaranteed you're going to see something interesting once a week.
Yeah.
And you'd see it more even if you were there, if you, drove the hour,
Yeah.
more often. So, I mean, so many people I know, they who haven't been to the gorge, they talk about it like there's two places they want to go, and it's like to Maui to do Maliko, or they want to go to the gorge. So that's super cool. So I got a couple more questions, and I don't want to keep you too long because we've been at it for about 30 minutes here. I want to make sure that I don't keep you from your day, and I also want to make sure that the people who are watching, they find that it's interesting, and we don't cross the line between, them getting to know Bodhi and them getting bored with Bodhi. So, I just, I guess if there was one paddler that you haven't had a chance to paddle with, or you haven't had a chance to talk to, but that you'd like to paddle with and maybe pick their brain on something, who would it be? Who do you think it would be, and what kind of question do you think you'd like to ask them?
I think it would be. I haven't really gotten to paddler talk with like Connor Baxter or Michael Booth.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably be asking them like, what I wonder how like with their 5K or 10K times would be, or 21K times just on in neutral conditions.
Right.
Because yeah, I'd like to see maybe them put some times in for the virtual paddle league races. That'd be cool.
Well, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I really would like them to do it, but I work with Connor, and I think what's happening with the pros is that in a year where there's really been no racing because of COVID,
Yeah.
I think these guys have lost a little bit of motivation. Not for paddling, I think they still enjoy paddling, but they also foil, they also surf.
Yeah.
Boothie, he does surf ski. They do a bunch of other water related things. And, Connor too, he and his wife just had a little boy, baby boy. And so I think some, there's some, whereas for guys like you, guys like Donnie, young guys who are on the way up, and then for older guys like like me and Tommy, who we just are happy to sort of keep paddling and sort of see if we can slow down our aging. There's lots of reasons to get out on the water every day and to try to improve. But when you're at that point where you're at the top of, you're very top of your game, and all of a sudden all the races that you normally train for have been taken away, I think there's probably a little bit of motivation, missing for going out and hammering and training.
Yeah.
And I think, they kind of probably want to, it's not like they aren't active or aren't staying fit, but I think they just don't have that mental edge that they would normally have. And I think they're probably reluctant to go and, bang out a 5K, which, it's a grind, right? Doing a hard 5K.
Yeah.
It's a grind, especially when you're doing it alone. And I think they're reluctant to do that, to go through that grind and know that whatever time they do isn't necessarily going to be their best because they're not on that sharp mental edge, and so I think that's why we haven't seen these guys get involved and fire up sometimes. But,
yeah,
I got to think that, when I start looking at the paces that people are going to do, like I got your time at 28:49.
Yeah.
And, that's fast. And if I start to think about what you're doing per kilometer, like you're moving at a pace that is hard for anybody to sustain for that distance. And don't forget too, you're doing it with a turn. So that probably adds about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because you slow down, you do the turn, you come out of the turn. There's probably 5 to 10 seconds that you could take off your time if you're going to do a straight line time. So,
yeah.
So when I look at that, I just think that, I have no doubt that, Boothie's demonstrated again and again in racing that he's in a flat water race, he's like the fastest guy in the world, right? Like, I mean, you see what he does in a lot of these races. He paddles away from the draft train.
Yeah.
And like, how crazy is that, right? Because, I mean, our boards are surfboards, basically. They're made to ride waves, right? So they're made to draft. And yet he's able to sort of paddle away from the train. So he's like super fast. But I can't imagine like how much faster he's going to be than, sort of 28, 30 in a 5K. Like, is he going to be under 28 minutes
Yeah, that's what I.
in a 5K? I don't know. And I'm like you, I'd love to see where these guys would be, So we're going to keep the virtual paddle league going next year when hopefully COVID is a thing of the past. And we're going to hope that people use it, as a fun thing to sort of do, if they're doing 5Ks in their training like you do, that they'll post their times and sort of stay competitive with that. I also think that as racing starts to develop more and more into sprint distances, something like the virtual paddle league is really good because it helps everyone understand what fast times are for a kilometer or for 500 meters or for 200 meters, So, hopefully these guys will be putting up some times that you'll be able to compare yourself against.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been tempted to ask Connor to do it, but I feel bad doing it because I know if he's not ready, then it's a big ask, And so we'll hope that these guys are back on that really fine edge next year with races to compete at, and that we can get them to show their cards, because I think it would be really cool for everybody to see, and in particular for guys like you that are on your way up. It's going to let you know exactly how much further you got to go to get to the highest level, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess two more questions. One was that you mentioned, in getting back to training, you mentioned cross training, and that you mentioned that you do all your how much paddling you're able to do in the setup that you have, and that you're not really limited by the seasons at all. But are you what kind of like cross training are you doing, and how often are you doing that kind of work?
Well, I foil a couple times a week.
Mm-hmm.
I do that, yeah, a couple times a week, and then I have a little garage gym.
Uh-huh.
And work out in my garage.
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 days a week.
So you're doing lots of strength work too while you're doing all the paddling, which I think is really important, right? I mean, paddling needs a lot of strength because if you think of these boards, you're on a 21-inch wide sick, and that's awfully narrow, but it's still fat compared to like sprint canoes and kayaks. It's still basically a surfboard. Mm-hmm. And it's made to go and do what you're doing in the ocean or what you're doing when you're in the gorge. It's not necessarily made to, it's not the ideal design, let's say, for paddling on your lake, right? Mm-hmm. And they've all the brands have tweaked their flat water boards so that they're all-round boards so they can be really good in flat conditions. But if you had to design a board that was only for flat conditions, you'd probably, maybe design things a little bit differently. And and what I found is that it takes some strength to move like a surfboard fast in flat water and kind of keep it on top of the water. It still takes some strength, and which strength, but then the ability to really it's power and the ability to maintain that power for again and again and again and again and again and again, like you're taking, think how many strokes you take in your typical 5K. That's a lot of power endurance, and so it's hard to develop that if you're only doing your work on your board and not spending any time in the gym. So it's good that you've got that garage gym. So you mentioned foiling. Are you doing that? You're not doing that in your flat lake. That's something you do when you go to the gorge or when you go to the ocean?
Well, we have a boat, so
sweet.
The second lake,
Yeah.
with a rope, and then just cruise behind
Right.
or
Right.
a loop
You,
around it.
you really do have the ideal setup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does your dad foil too?
Um, the boards, it's kind of tricky because it's 6'5", so
Uh-huh.
and you can't like start it like how you start like a wakeboard or something. You have
Right.
to standing up on it,
Yeah.
and it's 5 by 20, so it's kind of tippy.
Yeah.
And he's a big guy, so it's hard for him to stand on the board. But
Yeah. It's hard. It's harder for old guys too. You know, all these skills like that involve so much balance and really fine tuned balance and that. Like it's I've come to the realization that there's things that I'd like to do that I'm never going to do, like or never going to do well. And so I got to live vicariously through watching guys like you. So, um, to an extent, I don't know, how old's your dad?
48.
48. So he's closing in on 50. So it's
Yeah.
tougher for old guys. So, but it's good that he's able to get out there and do so much stuff with you, because you wouldn't be doing it if he wasn't that kind of guy, right? So
Yeah.
that's super cool. Okay, last question. What are your goals for SUP in the future?
Well, the main goal for me would be to be one of the top guys out in the world at some point. And then to race and Olympics if stand-up paddling's in the Olympics, and Maui to Molokai is
Mm-hmm.
another big goal of mine. And then to hopefully win the Gorge Paddle Challenge double downwind some year.
That would be cool. That would be really cool. Well, Bodhi, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us, and and allowing me to ask a bunch of questions, so that the paddling community can get to know you. Something tells me that they're going to hear a whole lot more of you in the future, and I don't mean far away in the future. I mean like very soon in the future. And I suspect they might already have heard a lot more about you if we'd had a typical racing year, right? I think COVID has kind of changed a lot of things, and the fact that it means there's been really no racing has affected, obviously, guys like you. It's affected your chances to go out and show what you can do against the top guys. But I know that you're young, and you got your whole future in front of you, and that you're going to have lots of opportunities to race as soon as we get COVID behind us, which hopefully is next summer. So, and I'd say that right now there's people who are catching on to what you're doing because they're seeing what you're doing in the virtual paddle league. But if that's any indication, and thinking about how hard you're working, and the good leadership that you have, with older people to train with and to work with, I bet you it's not long before you are starting to realize some of these goals. So I want to thank you for taking this time to share a little bit about yourself with us. And I also want to say that I hope that people on the East Coast get to see you at some point, whether it's a race like the Carolina Cup or something like that.
Hoping to go to the Carolina Cup in November
Uh-huh.
if they have the Carolina Cup.
Yeah,
But
that would be amazing if they have it, to see you participate. I think people would be really excited about seeing you there. And I know you do really well, because with your ocean skills and your technical skills, like especially in November, it's pretty gnarly there.
oh yeah,
But then also, all the work that you've done to handle the flats, and all those 5Ks that you're doing in your lake will really help you handle the flats well. So, that race is made for you. And it's a biggie normally. So that would be great to see you there sometime. And I'll just also say that if you're ever in my part of the world, in Toronto, Canada, come on out and paddle with us. And we get some good water some days too, and we'd love to have you and your dad come by for a visit. So all the best. Good luck the rest of the way.
thank you.
I hope you get a chance to race, like in a live real race this season.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, I know you're going to be doing your work, and I know that you'll be making a big statement next year. So best of luck, and
Thanks.
thanks again for sharing this time with us. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the water soon.
Yep. All right.
All right, Bodie, all the best.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay, cheers.